Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Tracy Cook, and I'm the Online Media Manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Agile Business Analysis, BA and BAs in today's Agile Digital World. Today's featured speaker is Andrea Brockmeyer, PMP, CSM, Director of Project Management at Watermark Learning. Today's webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the question and answer session at the end. Please be sure to submit your questions in advance by using the questions feature of the GoToWebinar software. And Andrea, thank you. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Tracy. It's terrific to be here with you folks today to talk about Agile Business Analysis, BA and BAs in today's Agile digital world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. It's great to be here. So I have collected some thoughts to share with you today based on the 20+ years that I have worked with hundreds of fabulous students and colleagues in a variety of different environments based on things that I am hearing and reading that others experience and have to say about this, and based on my own experience in the field. So these are what I think are the salient points to be made right now around Agile business analysis, sort of the state of things right now. And in the spirit of Agile, I suspect and hope that my thoughts will evolve, but this is kind of where I'm at right now, and I hope some of this resonates with you. So, there we go. Okay, so sort of the things that I want to talk about today. First of all, I want to take a look at how is business analysis used in organizations. Where do we see BA actually getting applied? I want to talk a little bit about where business analysts fit in that environment. And I also want to talk about what does business analysis contribute, and of course, all of those in an Agile environment specifically. So that's kind of not in a linear way, but those are the themes that I'm sort of going to dance around here today in our time together. So the first thing I want to do is get some thoughts from you in terms of what you see happening. And so what I'd like you to do is think about what you have seen in terms of sort of the evolution of business analysis, say in the last, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years, something like that. What changes have you seen either in your organization or organizations or just in the field that you work in? Where do you see BAs doing more now than they used to? So I was kind of limited in terms of the number of options. I tried to come up with some big buckets here, but has it been mostly around technical work, things like testing, data analytics, project management, maybe tool use, which could include tracing or modeling or even animated or automated tools, more strategic level work, or maybe, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of change. So Tracy, if you want to go ahead.
And Andrea, I've just shared the results on the screen for your first poll.
Great, wow. Wow, okay, so interesting. So I picked some good buckets, I think, because they look pretty, all of them full. No big surprise on that last one. I felt like I had to put that in there. I didn't think anybody would really see not much change. But so think about this. Think about how that role has expanded in all of these different ways. I mean, I think that's pretty telling. So a follow-on poll question I have is that given all of that, expansion of the role of the BA, and there was the assumption that there has been, which of the following do you think has been the biggest contributor to that expansion of the BA role? Has it been the maturing of the BA profession and discipline? Has it been driven primarily maybe by the increasing number of certified business analysts who are driving that? Is it organizations using Agile, better tools that are available, or maybe something else?
We'll just give everyone a few more seconds to respond, and then I'll share the results. And Andrea, you can see the results now on the screen.
Great. Thank you. Okay, interesting. All right, so of course I wish I had enough bubbles there where I could have had fill in the blank for something else. I'd love to know what that 11% is all about. Yeah, so maturing of the profession, to be sure, and largely Agile. And one of the premises that I'm working from here today is that the incorporation of Agile, the adoption of Agile, is going hand in hand with the expanding role of the BA, or that the role of the BA is expanding in no small part due to the use of Agile, the increasing use of Agile. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm looking at here. So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that. So we'll kind of come back around to these things here as we go along. So imagine, if you will, not terribly long ago, there was sort of this world. We had the business and we had the team, and the business, they were the keepers of the requirements, and so we'd have the BAs come in and they would facilitate and they would sort of courier between and go gather, we used to call it gathering requirements, and get those to the team. And we've spent a lot of years maturing our discipline and our practice around that. And I have a colleague, it seems like it wasn't that long ago, and I remember her talking about a project that she worked on for a big bank in the Southeast US, and they spent 8 months eliciting requirements and defining them and documenting them and tracing them. And after those 8 months, they had the requirements in this, perfect condition. And then their development folks came in. They came in from the outside even, she bragged, and they came in, and for 2 weeks they did the development work. There were hardly any questions, and then they, ta-da, there they gave them to the customer, and that was great, and it was perfect. Customer was happy, and there we go. And that was kind of heralded as, great business analysis. And I remember telling students, boy, that's how it's done. And I, checked with her a couple of times, really, that's how it worked? Yeah, and that was sort of held up as sort of the bar for how you do business analysis. And it's funny to think back on that, because if you did that nowadays, imagine taking that kind of an approach nowadays. What would happen? I mean, 6, 8, 12 months, you say, okay, we got our requirements and now we're going to go build it. Here you go. And what would happen? I mean, your customer would look at you and they'd say, well, we don't want that anymore. Or, somebody else already provided that to us, or nobody's doing it that way anymore. Any of the myriad reasons why that wouldn't work. And of course, the reason that it doesn't work is that there's all this uncertainty that we have, right? There's, just various dimensions of uncertainty around the economy, the global dynamics, demographics, customer uncertainty. And so it's really not in anyone's or any organization's best interest to be complacent around what's happening in the environment. Everybody has to be thinking about how they respond to this. I mean, even in traditional, waterfall works great in construction, but if you're in the housing industry and building houses, you have to even be thinking about changing needs from the customers, kitchen optional. I mean, they talk about, people, whether or not how they even use kitchens anymore is changing. So to be sure, to a different degree, but there's just uncertainty that, of course, is why we're taking a look at and incorporating Agile into how we are doing things. It's simply how we're going to survive. And really nobody can afford not to be on some kind of an Agile journey. I would suggest that everyone is being impacted by this, whether you have, brought in a framework specifically and have done it top to bottom in a formal way. Everybody is being impacted by Agile, and everybody is having to use the values and the principles to filter how they approach their work these days in order to navigate this uncertainty. So I think in many ways we're all on an Agile journey of some kind. So now, many folks are doing sort of the top to bottom, bringing in Scrum, bringing in whatever. And I'm kind of joking here about Camp Kumbaya, but there's sort of this idea that you've got now the business and the team, and everybody's together, and everybody's collaborating, and that everybody's got easy access to what they need. And I appreciate. I know it's not always like that, but sort of this idea that there's a place for everybody. Now in this new world order, there's this place for the team and the business, and everybody kind of has a new place to go. And but I've got plenty of folks that I talk to, and business analysts included, who are not entirely certain about how this new world order provides a spot for them. There is a lot of sort of, what about me? Where do I fit in? I don't see a place for me necessarily in this new. There isn't a BA in many of the frameworks formally for where people are seeing their organizations go. But I would suggest that BAs should feel pretty solid about having a seat at the table in any organization that is using Agile. In fact, I would suggest that of all the traditional project roles, it is pretty hard to compete with the value proposition that BAs offer Agile organizations in terms of the skills that they bring, the tools that they use, and the mindset that has characterized business analysis from the beginning. So anybody's value proposition in an Agile organization these days has to be, what can you do to help the organization navigate uncertainty and remain valued by your customers? Nobody answers that question better than a BA. Now, there are a couple of specific roles that I do want to take a look at, not because I think they're a right answer, but because I get so many questions about them, and people seeing folks utilize Scrum, and then they're like, well, I'm a BA. Should I be this? Should I be that? So I just want to talk about a couple of roles that people often either find themselves in or try to fit themselves into. And importantly, I want to say that this isn't a right or wrong thing. And I think that there are, BAs, there are PMs that can find themselves in these roles, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But just a couple of thoughts that I want to share about two roles in particular. First of all, sometimes BAs will find themselves or try to make their way into the role of a coach or a Scrum Master if you're using Scrum. And so, that's sort of somebody who's removing roadblocks for the team. They're an advocate for Agile. They're sort of that servant leader, maybe a team mentor. And I think one of the things that leads people to seeing a BA in this role is that facilitation is a key skill or a key thing that they're doing. BAs facilitate, coaches or Scrum Masters facilitate, and that is true, no doubt about it. And certainly there are some BAs that may really succeed and do really great in this role. I don't see, though, this role utilizing the breadth of skills that BAs typically have. And so while some may do well here, I don't see this necessarily as a really good fit for many of the BAs who have a much larger repertoire of things that they utilize and skills and tools that they utilize. Now, the BA as product owner in many ways makes a lot more sense. So these are the folks making business decisions. They're maintaining the backlog, making sure that it's ordered, making sure that things on there are defined such that they can be, the things, there's enough to get pulled into the next iteration or sprint, making sure that that product review, things happen there that need to, that the right people are there, providing that shared vision. This, in my mind, really leverages what a BA has to offer in terms of skills and just the breadth of things that they do. So a lot of times BA will be put into the role of a product owner. So this makes sense from many standpoints, but there are definitely, in my mind, some challenges with this. So a product owner, if you're familiar with the AAA rating, we talk about a PO and a AAA rating. 3 things that a PO needs. They need, first of all, they need authority. And they're making decisions on behalf of the stakeholders of the customer. And so they need the authority to be able to do that. Okay. They also need the ability or the knowledge to be able to answer questions that stakeholders and customers have. Right? The knowledge about the business, the knowledge about what we're building. The thing is that they also need availability, and usually that's a tough nut to crack sometimes. A lot of times the product owner is, and partly a lot of times because they have that authority, their availability is not so great. And so that's the biggest complaint that I see and hear about, is the product owner's availability. And so that becomes very problematic. Enter the BA who has availability. Yeah, let's have them do that. That works great. And certainly they have the ability and the knowledge around the business and what we're building. Problem with the BA? That authority, not so much. They're usually not in a position like a PO would be to make decisions on behalf of the stakeholders at large or the customer. So there's a challenge there around that. The other thing, importantly, is that if you think about the product owner and a business analyst, the product owner is really a decision maker. And they're making the decisions around a variety of things. The business analyst is traditionally and in today is a trusted advisor. It is not their job to make decisions in the role of BA. Right? It's our job to use the tools, apply our skills, and provide information to the decision makers to enable them to make good business decisions. So there's an inherent conflict of interest there, and POs who find themselves sort of trying to serve as a proxy PO, there's going to be some rub there, where we're kind of providing that objectivity and that trusted advisor role, and then being expected to make decisions. So that can be problematic. That would be the other caveat that I would have around that. Now, again, this is not to suggest these are right or wrong. I think these can work for different folks in different organizations, but just sort of my thoughts around those 2 roles in particular. So that's 2 roles. Maybe you find a place there in one of those, maybe not. Maybe you're left wondering, all right, well, where else is there? Where else could I plug in? Where else are the BA skills being used in an Agile environment? So here we have just a picture painted. This is a Scrum environment here. And let's take a look, as an example, let's take a look at where is business analysis going on in this environment. Let's take a look at some of the things happening around that PO and that stakeholder liaison stuff that's happening. Visioning, understanding the business need, business case development, which of course still happens, modeling perhaps to make those things clear, some of the modeling that can be done that plays into business case development, eliciting certainly as we're understanding and getting input from various stakeholders, prioritizing. This is business analysis work. It's in an Agile environment, but this is stuff BAs have always done. Translating is a big part of this too. And Elizabeth Larson had an article published here on Modern Analyst a few weeks ago about the role of the BA as translator. Boy, that sure doesn't go away in an Agile environment. We're still having to do that. In fact, in many ways, as the technology continues to become more complex, doing even more translating. So this is definitely, a lot of business analysis happening here at this level. How about with the development team? Where is business analysis going on there? Well, working with the team members to do estimating, again using modeling to provide additional clarity around the work to be done. Writing requirements, maybe in the form of user stories, maybe in the form of something else, maybe in the form of both. Getting acceptance criteria defined. Looking at those test results. What do those tell us? Prioritizing. And let's not forget traditional BA work. We don't throw things like tracing entirely out the window. Now, to be sure, there are a lot of Agile environments where they're not doing much in the way of tracing, or that it's lighter. But I will tell you, I have plenty of students who say, yeah, we're doing Agile and we still use requirements traceability matrices. If you've got a regulatory project, or a lot of constraints around external constraints that you're working with, or things, regulatory kinds of things, there may be some tracing that we're doing. Non-functional requirements, those things are still something that have to be tended to. Business rules, we don't just ignore those because we're in an Agile environment. And again, that translating. The sprint itself, or the iteration, whatever approach we're using, the review, taking a look at providing to the customer what it is, sharing with the customer what it is that we've done. The retrospective with the team, if we're on the team. All of the skills that we bring to those instances as well. Facilitating, listening, getting to consensus. Those are things that core BA skills that are being used, and you can see ubiquitously here. I mean, it's BA skills are everywhere. And so I think what we're going to see, and what we are seeing, is that the question isn't where is business analysis being used, but what are the specialties and the areas that BAs are going to need to specialize in? It's everywhere here. So what you're going to see is BAs specializing, maybe more strategic at the higher levels. Maybe it's going to be around technology. Maybe it's going to be around more of the team-focused stuff. This is clearly more than something that more than one person can do. So I think sometimes we think, where do we put the BA? Instead, be thinking about where is business analysis, and where are the things that we can have multiple people doing, and really be evangelizing for the idea that business analysis is something that maybe everybody needs to know a little something about. I think we need to increasingly think about business analysis as it's a team sport. This is something that everybody on the team needs to have some understanding of. And kind of like in, years ago, project management, for a while, you had the PM. They were sort of the keeper of the PM discipline and everything around project management. And then we started, seeing sponsors doing a little PM training. Let's get them informed about what this is all about. Let's pull team members into some PM training. I'll tell you, the organizations where I was doing PM training up and down, and everybody was getting some exposure to that. That's where you really got that that momentum around your projects. That was enormously helpful. It's the same kind of thing with business analysis. I had an eliciting requirements class a couple of weeks ago, actually, and it was pretty interesting. I was asking people, so why did you, what brought you to class? And for the first time, I had 2 developers in class. And I asked them, why did you come to class? And they said, my manager made me come. And it was with about that much enthusiasm. There was no secret about them not being too happy about having to come to a BA class around eliciting. And so at the end of the class, I asked them, I said, so what'd you think? They were like, oh my God, this was so helpful. So, here you've got folks, developers, and they're just thinking all they want to do is write code. Eliciting, let's get some skills there. They found that super helpful. And we need to kind of think in terms of, mitigating bottlenecks for that BA role and those BA skills, just like we do everything else in an Agile environment. Let's think about sharing that broadly throughout the organization. So I think that should be a huge comfort and an opportunity for BAs to go into an organization and say, hey, don't just look for a place for me. Here are the things that I do as a BA. This is happening everywhere. Let me help you develop that capability throughout the organization. So skills and tools, however, are not enough, right? There's this mindset piece that is really key. And so you can be brilliant with the tools, you can have spectacular skills, but really without the right mindset, the right agile mindset, your value proposition is going to be compromised. Now, there are a lot of sources that identify sort of this suite of key capabilities or competencies that BAs need today to do good work in agile environments. So, you know, project management's got the Guide to BA and their BA practice guide. The International Institute of Business Analysis has their Agile extension to the BABAC guide and their related certification, Agile Analysis certification. And of course, all of those are inspired by the Agile Manifesto. So we've got these sort of mindset components that get put together in a little different way, but really all speak to the idea that you have to approach what you're doing and apply your skills and tools through this, utilizing this mindset. So there are a variety, a number of them, and there are two that I want to focus on that I think are core BA mindsets that are not unique actually to Agile. I think these are things that BAs have traditionally had and that they offer to an organization, and that I think they can be really instrumental in helping to infuse an organization with the right mindset. So the first is big picture thinking. And I can't tell you how many times I ask students in my class, people who come from different project related roles, and I ask them, so can you articulate how what you are doing day to day is aligned with what the organization is trying to achieve? Can you identify how what you're doing is helping the organization get to where it wants to go? And I can't tell you how many times I get either blank stares or people just shaking their heads. Even now, it is astounding at how many people really cannot connect the dots between what they are doing and what the organization is trying to achieve. Anything bigger than what they're doing, just can't do it. Now, I think at best, this is demoralizing. I think that, you know, how do you not see, want to see or need to see yourself in a bigger picture? I do think, though, at the same time that it's kind of a safe place to be, right? And it's kind of easy to just have my mind on what it is that I do and not have to think about the bigger picture, not have to really be concerned about how I am or not aligned with that. It's pretty easy to just jump to my technical details and not worry about that. But there is a risk with that, I think, and increasingly so, with everybody not having an idea of the bigger picture. Now, if I asked you to close your eyes and said, okay, so I want you to think about the work that you do and lift your head up, and I want you to think about the entire context of your work. What is everything that encompasses or characterizes or is a part of the context within which you work? So I think a lot of people would think of things like, okay, it's not just me and my job, but the others in my area, the other functions in my organization, all of the people in my organization, maybe the entire corporation. It includes the processes, it includes the business rules and how we do things around here. Maybe we'd even think of capital assets and infrastructure. And we'd think of all of the details inside our little snow globe, if you think about it. It's kind of like a snow globe, right? And you can shake that thing up and there's sometimes confusion. There's all these details and we work really, really hard to make sense of all that. And eventually the snow kind of settles. All that details, we can have a crystal clear understanding of what is inside of that snow globe. But what we need to be thinking about these days in an agile digital world is what's going on outside the globe. We need to have big picture thinking, not just within our organization, but from the outside. What is the economy? What are those dynamics? What about technology that changes daily, hourly probably? What about the political environment in terms of, you know, how decisions are getting made? What about competitors? What about regulations that's changing fairly frequently. What about talent? What about the skills that people even have? Not just what we have internally, but what are the things that people can do these days? What implications does that have for our organization? And what we need to see is what our customers see. How do others see us? This is the only way that we can truly get a sense of ourselves. We can know everything about the inside, and we can have flawless, beautiful, zero waste processes. But what we need to be able to see is what others see, particularly our customer. This is the only way, as BAs, we can contribute to the development of business strategies, is by seeing things from the outside. So I teach in a BA class, and we have a portion of this class where you do an interview with a stakeholder to get at context. And we've been teaching this for many, many years. And one of the questions is, what are you in the business of doing? What is your business about? And it's pretty amusing because I'll tell you, years ago, people would look at me and they'd say, oh my God, I can't ask that question. We'd do role play, right? Somebody would be the BA and somebody would be a stakeholder. And we'd say, okay, BA, ask them, what is your business about? What are you in the business of doing? And they'd look it over and they'd say, I can't ask this. If I ask this question, I get fired. It's my job to know what we're in the business of doing. Fast forward to today. I don't know, is that such a dumb question? What are we in the business of doing? I think really good organizations are asking that on a regular basis, because those dynamics outside of our organization can require that we nuance or change direction. We have to be thinking all the time, is the business that we're in, does it make sense? Is this what people are looking for? Are the competitors that we defined yesterday the same competitors today? I think that increasingly we're finding that's a pretty good question to ask. Maybe the answer is the same, maybe it's different. But it's something that everybody should be able to answer as well, not just the folks at the top. Everybody should have a sense of that. That's BA stuff. That's BA work. So this big picture thinking includes the idea of systems thinking, right? And thinking not just big picture, but thinking of the complexity of the components in that environment. And that's what BAs do, right? Look for patterns. Are there things that we want to reinforce? What do we see customers doing more of? What do we see customers doing less of? And certainly technology and metrics can help with this. But there's part of this big picture thinking of systems and understanding how one thing impacts another. I mean, this is just nuts and bolts business analysis rather thinking, and looking at how do factors from the outside impact things that we're doing. Another aspect of big picture thinking that BAs have long adhered to or had done and been good at is creative thinking. So, coming up with new ideas, coming up with new concepts or products, thinking about new ways of thinking about things. But it's not just enough to come up with something new, right? You got to pair that with utility or use, and that's really innovation. So organizations, of course, are always wanting innovation, and it's really business analysts who are in the best position to think about those new ideas and finding out how could people utilize something and do that, develop and contribute to innovation. So, and that's a big piece of our digital world is not just the technology, and certainly that's a part of digital, but how do our customers interface with us? How do they experience us, and how can we create new ways of them interfacing and experience what it is that we have to offer? So business analysis and business analysts haven't really had to reinvent themselves to work in an agile environment. We really bring some of the things that we have always been good at and apply them in an agile environment. I would say more so than some other project roles. Some of the tools that BAs have at their disposal to contribute to big picture thinking. Product roadmaps, right? This is a big picture tool, can help facilitate different aspects of that understanding and expectation setting for stakeholders and of course customers. So getting an idea of what is it that customers are looking for and when are those things going to happen, not in a contractual sort of way or not as a this is exactly what we're going to do, but getting an idea and kind of playing that out and looking at maybe that, how is that going to evolve over time. Story mapping, it's another tool that BAs have in their toolkit to use with stakeholders to keep us from getting lost in the rush to those individual stories and some of that detail. Pull back, pull up. Let's pull up. We need a bigger perspective here. I was just working on one of these the other day, and we were talking about all the front end work that goes to this, all the things that have to be done before you even get to this point, big picture stuff. And so, getting everybody involved and really thinking about the customer needs that are driving the things that people are doing. So this is, seeing the bigger context and getting what is it that the customer does? What are the details around that? What are the ways that the sequence maybe in which we're going to address those things? Impact map, another big picture tool, fairly simple to do, help align team members with, understanding what the business objectives are, taking a look at what our goals are, who are the people that are participating or doing something around that, what is their impact, what are the deliverables that contribute or work against that. So these are good ways of helping to make sure that teams understand what the business is trying to do and make good decisions. Product alignment model, another tool. What is core to what we do as an organization? What are the things that might differentiate us in the market? Again, getting outside of that globe, what are the other things that people are offering? So looking at ways of maybe prioritizing decisions that we make on where to invest, and looking at both customer and business value. So I share these not with the intention of, this isn't about how to use these things in detail, but just that these are the things that are in a BA's toolkit that they offer and that are great tools to use in Agile environments to contribute to get people to pull up. People are so inclined to rush to the detail. And we're it's the BA who's pulling people by the shirt collar back, pull up, let's get a bigger perspective. And our traditional BA work, think about how that keeps a focus on the bigger picture, the business rules, our self-imposed constraints, how we do things, our non-functional requirements that are not just specific to a single feature, but apply across the product. So in many ways, a lot of the standard work that we do too, it's been the BA's role all along to kind of maintain a big picture focus. And certainly BAs are skilled, as I said before, and adept and experienced, and the expectation is that they work with folks up and down and across the organization. So it's, this isn't unique to Agile either. This is, but part of what we do to help maintain that big picture is that we're broadly interfacing throughout the organization. So there are all sorts of layers inside the globe there and outside that we're interfacing with. And again, this is, a skill that is clearly not just an individual, but think in terms of something that's used ubiquitously. So the Agile BA is a big picture thinker, and they are the ones that are helping us get a sense of how others see us so that we can make good decisions, good business decisions, and develop good strategies for how we evolve our organization and continue to meet our stakeholders, our customers' needs. So this is one key aspect of that mindset and a component, I think importantly, an important component of the Agile business analyst value proposition. All right, so one more poll question here. In your project work or in your non-project work, whatever you do, in your work, how often do considerations about the customer impact your decision making? How often, and really think about this, how often as you're moving through your day, do you think about the customer in your decision making?
Excellent. And the poll's launched. Let's just give everyone a few more seconds for a response. And Andrea, I'll show the responses now.
Thank you. All right, right on. Yeah, absolutely. Customer centricity. So everybody, always or at least often, customer centricity really, in my mind, is the bedrock of surviving in the digital age. Everything has to be thought about from the perspective of the customer. And I will confess, this is hard. I sometimes find myself having to, pull back and say, okay, let's think about, does this really matter in terms of what the customer is looking for? And, with the tempo of change and technology, we absolutely have to be as determined and as focused about this as we have been in the last number of years around, eliminating waste and continuous improvement and all of the things internal to our organization. We have to be absolutely relentless about this, because if we don't meet the customer's needs, then, somebody else will, that is for sure. So increasingly, we think less about, or not exclusively at least, about the business problem inside the globe, and think about the real customer outside. And so, like I say, I think this is not always easy. We have, spent a lot of time thinking about how things work inside, and that's really been sort of at the cornerstone of our work for a long time. And now to have to think, it's not so much about that, it's what's going on the outside. We have to be thinking about the customer from that perspective, and it's easy to get stuck. So this occurred to me the other day, and even thinking about who is the customer is a question to ask. And so I have a friend who sends her son to a private school, and she utilizes an app for paying tuition. And so her school contracts with this company that provides this application for tuition paying parents to pay their tuition online. So she was complaining about this app, and it wasn't really clear about how to get certain documents that needed to be provided, and she wasn't really clear about how the tuition was split between, her and another person, and there were some scholarship questions about how scholarships were being applied and when. And so she, had some complaints about this app that she was using. Now, I was thinking, okay, years ago, and I don't know how many companies do this. Maybe there are tons, I don't know, maybe there's a whole bunch of companies that provide this tuition paying service to schools. I have no idea. But I think that if I were in that company, probably years ago, you'd have thought, well, we have a contract with these schools and they pay us and we provide this application. And that's probably a pretty good deal, right? That's probably not something that's going to change a lot. The tuition, that's what parents do. They used to pay tuition, and that's just how it is. But nowadays, how do they have to think? If I'm in that company, I'm thinking, okay, who's my customer? Well, there's the customer who is the school that's paying me to provide this application. They're the ones I have the contract with. But there's also that tuition paying parent. And we ignore them at our peril, because what's going to happen is that parent's going to talk to somebody else, and she says, well, I send my kid to a different school and we use this app, and boy, you know what? We get automatic notification when our scholarships have been applied, and we can, on my phone, I can very easily see how tuition was distributed among the different people contributing and how that was allocated, and I get reminders when scholarship applications are due. Who knows what they're looking for, right? So as a parent, I go to the school and I say, hey, I really don't like how this app is that I have to use to pay tuition. I think you should use something else. I mean, it's kind of a different world. Who is the customer? It's not just the one that we have necessarily the contract with. So practicing agility is really thinking about who that customer is, meeting them where they're at, and hopefully before they get there, because we want to be there first or somebody else is going to meet that need, right? So this big picture thinking, we have to couple this with this relentless focus on the customer, thinking always about what it is that the customer cares about. And let's look at a list of the things that the customer doesn't care about: your project, your business, how many options you offer, your internal processes, how engaged your employees are. We think about a lot of effort and resources spent on those things. I'm not saying we totally ignore them, but we need to keep our eye on the prize, and that's the customer holding that. So BAs have all sorts of tools that they have traditionally used and that get used in an agile environment that lend themselves to customer centricity, beginning with the idea that agile BAs are storytellers, and they bring out the storyteller in others. And so you think about even requirements in a agile environment. User stories, writing user stories, or the CCs of user stories, card confirmation, conversation, right? A lot of emphasis around that. This is what BAs do. We've been doing this for a long time. That's part of that facilitating and listening, those core competencies that make BAs good at what they do. And you can think about some of the tools that take advantage or sort of leverage that storytelling. Personas, for example. How would a parent who works long days to pay for tuition at their kid's school, what would be some things that they might think would make a tuition app better? What would meet their needs? Harriet, the hardworking tuition-paying parent, what might Harriet want? Well, probably free tuition. Probably can't do that, but maybe a discount for using some kind of feature on the application. Who knows, right? Maybe Harriet's got an idea. Maybe you've got an idea that Harriet thinks is a good one. We've got to use that thinking to meet them where they're at before they get there. Keep them at the center of the conversation. Empathy maps, kind of a lightweight persona. Great way to sketch out visually, what is it that customers need? What do they think and feel? Kind of getting a sense for who they are, what would meet their needs. Customer journey maps, I think this is an underutilized tool, the idea that we have a sense of what our customers experience. And I think people have ownership for various things that our customers interface with. But I think our understanding of what our customers experience is a lot of times based on conjecture. I think a lot of times we think we know. But here's an idea: customer journey, go on one. Secret shop yourself. See what it's like to be a customer. Don't just think we know. Let's see what it's really like. That's a Agile BA, right? BA's doing getting an understanding of that. So the Agile BA is customer centric. I think in these ways, BAs are using big picture thinking to focus on the customer and helping our organizations, navigate that uncertainty so we stand a chance of providing something, of continuing to provide that customer with something that they value. We're the ones putting the door on that snow globe to get outside and see things from that customer perspective. That's how we get organizational agility that is value-driven and customer-focused. And the good news is, this is core BA stuff. Now, the other thing that I do want to mention, just because I think it's important, is that, it's easy to talk about this stuff and say, oh, we should do this and that, and we should ask, who is your customer? What is your business about? But it takes some courage to do that. And, sometimes asking questions that others aren't used to hearing, or that maybe is just a little uncomfortable in one way or another. Reminding people that, hey, let's focus on the real customer, or let's even talk about who our customer is. suggesting that this is not just about solving a business problem. I mean, that may not fly with a lot of people. How do our customers really see us? You know, asking things that maybe can feel threatening to folks. And, you know, business analysis has often traditionally put us in difficult positions, and that continues sometimes to be the case in Agile as well. And I think a good Agile BA is courageous. So how is BA used? It is used at every level, from strategizing and visioning at the high level down to detailed requirements in one format or another, up and down and across the organization. It is ubiquitous. And so how does the BA fit? Everywhere. It's a team sport. This needs to be less about how an individual fits in and how do we incorporate many individuals who are going to increasingly specialize and elevate the business analysis skills of everybody in the organization. And you may have noticed that the BAs in this presentation are wearing sunglasses, and that's because the future is bright for business analysts in Agile. It's everywhere. And what does business analysis contribute? It's skills and tools and the right mindset that are hard-coded into BAs. That's part of their DNA for big picture thinking and customer centricity. And so it's not, you know, where does it fit, but where is it not? Let's do what we can to make sure that business analysis, we're taking advantage of that so that it doesn't become the bottleneck, and allow us to do what we need to do, that Agile mindset, applying our skills and tools through that lens. And so those are what I see really as the key components of the Agile business analysis value proposition. So those are my thoughts, and at this point I would be happy to take questions.
Thanks, Andrea. What a great session so far. We do have a few or many questions, so I'll try and get right into them, I should say. Our first question: in an Agile world, where does the role of a BA end and project manager begin? Or are these roles intersecting more and more?
Yeah, you know, I am really, that's an interesting question, and I'm really glad that on that first poll I had project manager, and I think it was about, there wasn't a whole lot of difference between those 4 buckets I had. I think what's happening, and I think what's happening is that BAs are taking on some of the things that project managers typically did. And I'll tell you that my biggest piece of advice right now to PMs is to start developing and honing your BA skills. So let me kind of circuitously answer this. So I think that PMs have done a lot of business analysis, typically, and many of them in their roles, and they need to be focusing more on that. And it's interesting to see that BA is taking on a little more, some of that project management as well. You know, I think that, to be honest, I think the translation for a BA into an Agile environment is a lot less confusing than is translating a PM role into an Agile environment. I don't think there's much of a stretch at all. It's a pretty short walk for a BA from a traditional to an Agile environment. I think PMs struggle more. So I don't know that there is, I think what you're going to see is more of a blending of that. I don't know that, because you think about the project manager as the custodian of the project, and the BA is the custodian of the product. Well, in Agile, nobody cares about your project. And, you know, that's a sort of a stab in the gut for, you know, PM long timers. That hurts a little bit, but it's the truth. They don't care. Nobody cares about your project. It's about the product. So I think what we're going to see is business analysts, and it's almost kind of that hybrid role, doing planning from the standpoint of going out and finding out what needs to be done for the upcoming iteration or sprint, and really sort of the planning that happens throughout that environment as well. I think there's going to be more of a blending, PMs taking on that role, and PMs developing more BA skills so that they can plug in all of those places that we just looked at. So I don't think it's going to be a clear-cut thing. I think it's going to be more, there's some PM that goes into doing business analysis in an Agile environment.
Thanks, Andrea. Our next question, are Agile projects more successful than traditional waterfall?
Are Agile projects more successful than traditional waterfall? Well, that depends on, of course, how you practice Agile or how you practice traditional. I don't know. I don't have fresh statistics on the tip of my tongue actually at the moment. I think the successful projects and this are the projects done in organizations where people are adaptive, that are able to respond to change, that are able to get away from the idea of having really detailed, heavy documentation. I mean, I look at the organization that I'm in and how far we've come in the last number of years in terms of, decisions getting changed, just being more lightweight about everything. So I think those are the organizations that are more successful. I also think that, people, are you waterfall or are you Agile? I think for most people, it's kind of a mix. I mean, most organizations came from a more traditional environment, but they're incorporating an Agile mindset and Agile practices into their environment. So I don't know that it's kind of a tough question to ask, because I don't think there are many folks that are either or. I think everybody, like I say, is on some kind of an Agile journey.
Thanks, Andrea. We have time for a few more questions. What additional skills or new skills are important to learn in order to keep ourselves updated in the BA space?
Yeah. So I think that there are, I think there are different certifications that can be helpful. And the reason I mentioned certification is because that kind of requires that you commune with some of the standards in the field and think about, what is, it kind of captures the thinking around the skills and the things that you need to have. I'm a big advocate of that, actually, because I think it helps you. That's a good way to get you to be thinking and about the best way to practice business analysis these days in an Agile environment. But I think the skills are a lot of the soft skills: listening, storytelling, conflict management, consensus building, influencing. I think, honestly, those are really the best skills to develop. And if you look at people who are really good at this stuff, they're very good at the soft skills. And then practicing with the tools. So, a lot of the more complex modeling and things like that, as BAs, I think, specialize, they'll be kind of doing more of those things and kind of find themselves in a niche. But if you're just kind of looking at how do I build my BA skills sort of from the ground up, I would start with those soft skills. Those are the people that are really successful. And I can think of a colleague that I have, and boy, I listen to him do work, and he is amazing, and he is just incredible at how he brings people together and facilitates and does some great stuff, all because of his soft skills.
Thank you, Andrea. I think we have time for just one more question. Why is it so difficult to cite instances of quantitative contribution to the organization while you are performing your job as a BA?
Why is it so difficult to cite quantified
contributions to the organization while you're
as a BA, it's hard for me to say here are the numbers of how I've contributed. Is that?
Yes, correct.
Is that what you mean? Okay. Yeah. So boy, that's a good question for anybody. How can I demonstrate value in metrics, right? That I don't know. I have to think about that one. I think you'd have to think about how you would do that. How would you measure that? As a BA, how have I contributed in a measured way? How can I demonstrate value in terms of metrics? Before we started doing this, after we started doing this, before I came on board with this particular tool, after I came on board with this particular tool. I think it's hard to do that for ourselves individually. I think that's hard for anybody to do individually. Certainly there are, if you go to IIBA or PMI and look at some of their BA related things, there are white papers out there, or there are research results out there that have indicated organizations that are doing this, achieve higher levels of success, sort of at that level. How individually do we demonstrate that? That's a good one. I'd have to think about that some more, I think. And that's something that's probably a good idea for everybody to think about.
Thank you, Andrea.
Not a very satisfying answer. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
That's a good one. I'll hang up and think about that. That's for sure.
We are at the top of the hour now, so I will close up the session. But Andrea, thanks. Your presentation today was excellent. We'd also like to thank everyone for attending today's session, and I'd like to remind everyone that it will be archived on the ModernAnalyst.com website within a few days. We hope you had a great webinar, and this concludes today's event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be with you here today. So thank you very much, and good luck, everyone.